Welcome back to another contextualized reading. We are moving through Homer's Odyssey, translated by Robert Fagles, for our course on Homer and the Critique of Western Civilization for the Center of Critical and Cultural Theory. My name is Dr. Roger K. Green, and let's carry on. So, I'm going to pull this off screen share here. And dig in. So, book 3 of the Odyssey is titled Nestor Remembers. And so we left Telemachus in the book before sailing off from Ithaca and on to Pylos, right, which is where Nestor is. And as they come in to the port in Pylos, we get another one of these, I call them like cinematic types of shots that Homer gives us as a narrator here. And we come in on a grand sacrifice to Poseidon. So it opens, as the sun came up, or sprang up, leaving the brilliant waters in its wake, climbing the bronze sky to the shower light on immortal gods and mortal men across the plowlands ripe with grain, the ship pulled into Pylos, Neleus' storied citadel, where the people lined the beaches, sacrificing sleek black bulls to Poseidon, god of the sea blue mane who shakes the earth. And then we get numbers here, right? They sat in 9 divisions, each 500 strong, each division offering up 9 bulls. And while the people tasted the innards, burned the thigh bones for the god, and the craft and crew came heading straight to the shore. Striking sail, furling it in the balanced ship, they moored her well, and the men swung down onto land. Telemachus climbed out last, with Athena far in front, and the bright-eyed goddess urged the prince along. And remember, Athena is possessing the body of Mentor as well. And she's urging him on, and she's giving him confidence and giving him counsel as a wise elder, right? So she says, Telemachus, no more shyness. This is not the time. We sailed the seas for this. For news of your father, where does he lie buried? What fate did he meet? So go right up to Nestor, breaker of horses. We'll make him yield the secrets of his heart. Press him yourself to tell the whole truth. He'll never lie. The man is far too wise. And Telemachus keeps on displaying his insecurity, right? And so this has become a characteristic of Telemachus, throwing the spear down in rage and anger earlier on. But then he keeps building up confidence. He becomes calmer, and he's overcoming his emotions as he comes into his being as a man, right? So Telemachus is relying a bit on Mentor for advice then on how to address the king. He says, how can I greet him, Mentor, or even approach the king? And she says, Telemachus, some of the words you'll find within yourself, the rest some power will inspire you to say. And then as they approach Nestor, notice that there is this law of Xenia, right? The law of hospitality. And even though Athena has said to Telemachus to go straight up to Nestor, Nestor recognizes Mentor first, recognizes the elder person. Nestor's son, Pisistratus, first to reach them, grasped their hands and sat them down at the feast on fleecy throws spread out along the sandbanks, flanking his brother Thrasymedes and his father. He gave them a share of innards, poured some wine in a golden cup, and lifting it warmly to Athena, daughter of Zeus, whose shield is storm and thunder, greeted the goddess now with an invitation. Say a prayer to the Lord Poseidon, stranger. His is the feast you found on your arrival. But once you've made your libation and your prayer, all according to ancient custom, hand this cup of hearty seasoned wine to your comrade here, so he can pour forth too. He too, I think, should pray to the deathless ones himself. All men need gods, but the man is younger, just about my age. That's why I give the gold cup first to you. So there's this recognition of maturity over youth. And Pisistratus, who's the youth of Nestor, the son of Nestor, recognizes Telemachus, but recognizes Mentor first. And so there's a sense that he's showing his own sort of sense of tact, as the story says here. And then we see that Athena, being a goddess, still prays to Poseidon. So she takes on the ritual as well. And she says, "Hear me, sea lord, you who embrace the earth, don't deny our wishes, bring our prayers to pass. First then to Nestor and all his sons grant glory, then to all these Pylians for their splendid rites grant a reward that warms their gracious hearts. And last, Poseidon, grant Telemachus and myself safe passage home, the mission accomplished that sped us here in our rapid black ship." And so she's prayed. Again, she then gives the cup to Telemachus, who basically repeats the same thing. And then they have a meal. And again, they have the meal first. They're offered the meal before Nestor or any of Nestor's sons ask them who they are. Once they finish the meal, then they get probed and asked who they are. Where did you sail from over the running sea lanes? Out on a trading spree or roving the waves like pirates, sea wolves raiding at will, who risk their lives to plunder other men? Poised, Telemachus answers, filled with the heart Athena herself inspired, to ask for the news about his father. Goes along and he says, "Nestor, son of Neleus, Achaea's pride and glory. Where are we from, you ask? I will tell you all. And so again, there's this gesturing back to the thing that was said before, to that external, and then bringing it back towards the internal, which I pointed out in an earlier lecture. Our mission here is personal, nothing public now. I'm on the trail of my father's widespread fame, you see, searching for the earth to catch some news of the great-hearted King Odysseus, who, they say, fought with you to demolish Troy some years ago." And then I'm going to skip down a little bit just for time here. "More than all other men, that man was born for pain. Don't soften a thing from pity, respect for me. Tell me clearly all your eyes have witnessed. I beg you, if ever my father, Lord Odysseus, pledged you his word and made it good in action once on the fields of Troy where you Achaeans suffered, remember his story now. Tell me the truth." And Nestor then launches into a bit of a recap of what occurs in Homer's Iliad, right? He says, "Dear boy, since you call back such memories, such living hell we endured in distant Troy, we headstrong fighting forces of Achaea, so many raids from shipboard down to the foggy sea, cruising for plunder wherever Achilles led us the way, so many battles round King Priam's walls we fought, so many gone, our best and bravest fell. There Ajax lies, the great man of war, there lies Achilles too. There Patroclus, skilled as the gods of counsel, who of course died and was the friend of Achilles and sets Achilles in a kind of rage in the climactic points of the Iliad. And there my own dear son, both strong and staunch, Antilochus, lightning on his feet and every inch a fighter. But so many other things we suffered past that count. What mortal in this wide world could tell it all? Not if you sat and probed his memory 5-6 years, delving for all the pains our brave Achaeans bore there. Your patience would fray, you'd soon head for home. So again, look at this. Just notice the passage. Notice that there's this delay. He doesn't go right away to telling what happened to Odysseus. There's a lot of talking around things. 9 years we wove a web of disaster for those Trojans, pressing them hard with every tactic known to man, and only after we slaved did Zeus award us victory. And no one there could hope to rival Odysseus. So now we get to Odysseus, right? Not for sheer cunning. At every twist of strategy he excelled us all. Your father, yes, if you are in fact his son. I look at you and sense a sense of wonder takes me. Your way with words, it's just like his, I'd swear. No youngster could ever speak like you, so apt, so telling. As long as I and great Odysseus soldiered there, why, never once did we speak out of odds, neither in open muster nor in royal council. Forever one in mind, in judgment balanced, shrewd, we mapped our army's plans so things might turn out best. And so we've gotten this character display of Odysseus, and we're getting this public recognition. At first he can't quite tell, are you a stranger, right? If you are his son, but then that's followed sort of more immediately with a more direct recognition. So again, there's this kind of looking external and moving internal in a very broad general sense, and then into the internal, and then we see that same gesture sort of mimicked more quickly or more rapidly with the more direct recognition of Telemachus. And it's through that recognition of Telemachus as Odysseus' son that Telemachus is himself coming into manhood, right? Because remember, he was out of sorts. He was in this state of arrested development as we opened the whole book, right? And he doesn't know what's happened to Odysseus, and he has no one to tell him that he has the claim to the throne that he himself will have as the son of a king. And then this is very interesting because Nestor goes on to tell that there was this fight, there was a strife between the two brothers, sons of Atreus, right? Remember the house of Atrides from earlier in the earlier lectures. And the sons are Agamemnon and Menelaus. Of course, Menelaus's wife, Helen, has been taken by Paris, and that's where the whole battle of the Trojan War is sort of coming from. But as Nestor says here, eyes of fire, Athena set them, Atreus' two sons, feuding. They summoned all the Achaean ranks to muster, rashly just at sunset, no hour to rally the troops, and in they straggled, sodden with wine, our heroes. The brothers harangued them, told them why they'd met a crisis, Menelaus urging the men to fix their minds on the voyage home across the sea's broad back. But it brought no joy to Agamemnon, not at all. He meant to detain us there and offer victims, anything to appease Athena's dreadful wrath. Poor fool, he never dreamed Athena would not comply. So the fight here is between the two brothers is one of them, Menelaus, is like, we'll finish the campaign against Troy. We've got Helen. Let's all go home. And Agamemnon is saying, no, we need to stay. We need to give some sort of libation with some sort of tribute to Athena for helping us through the battle. All the while, of course, what's being referenced is that we know that Agamemnon is going to go home only to meet his own death. And so the shadow text, the backstory, the intertextuality here, again, over and over again, what we see in these opening books of the Odyssey is that story that's told in the Oresteia, the story of Orestes coming for revenge against the slaying of his father, Agamemnon, by both his mother Clytemnestra and Aegisthus, the one who woos Clytemnestra away from Agamemnon. And again, although it's not mentioned here frequently in this text, we know that Clytemnestra is upset with Agamemnon for sacrificing their daughter Iphigenia to get winds to go off to battle Troy. But that doesn't seem to be a central feature here for Homer's telling of the story. Moving on, Nestor says, at dawn, half of us hauled our vessels down to sea. We stowed our plunder, our sashed and lovely women, but half the men held back, camped on the beach, waiting out for Agamemnon's next commands, while our contingent embarked. We pushed off and sailed at a fast clip as a god soothed out the huge troughing swells. We reached Tenedos quickly, sacrificed to the gods, the crews keen for home, but a quick return was not in Zeus's plan, not yet. That cruel power loosed a cursed feud on us once again. Some swung their rolling warships hard about. Odysseus sailed them back, the flexible, wily king veering over to Agamemnon now to shore his fortunes up. But not I, massing the ships that came in my flotilla. I sped away as the gods' mischief kept on brewing, dawning on me now. And Tydeus' son Diomedes fled too, rousing all his comrades. Later on in the day, the red-headed Menelaus joined us, overtook us at Lesbos, debating the long route home, whether to head north over the top rocky Chios, skirting Visri, keeping that island off to the port, running south to Chios by Mimas' gusty cape. We asked for the gods for a sign. He showed us one. He urged us to cut out a middle passage. And so all of this is to say, I mean, and they're carving out sort of the map of how they got back to Greece. Then there's many thighs of bulls were offered to Poseidon to help them get home. Remember, Poseidon is angry at Odysseus, but Odysseus has left them and gone back to Agamemnon. And so, as Nestor says here, this is how I made it back to Greece, but I don't really know what happened to your father Odysseus. He goes on. Telling of his journey home, and then if you keep following here, Orestes comes up again and again. So he goes on to talk about the Myrmidons, who were Achilles' soldiers, and he mentions Aegisthus around 220 here. He says, but Atreus' son Agamemnon, you yourselves, even in far off Ithaca, must have heard how he returned, how Aegisthus hatched the king's horrendous death. But what a price he paid in blood and suffering. Ah, how fine it is when a man is brought down to leave a son behind. Orestes took revenge. He killed that cunning, murderous Aegisthus who killed his famous father. And you, my friend, how tall and handsome I see you now. Be brave, you too, so men to come will sing your praises down the years. So again, we get this overt comparison between Telemachus and Orestes. And Telemachus takes this right up and says, O Nestor, son of Neleus, Achaea's pride and glory, what a stroke of revenge that was. All Achaeans will spread Orestes' fame across the world, a song for those to come. If only the gods would arm me in such power, I'd take revenge on the lawless brazen suitors riding roughshod over me, plotting reckless outrage. But for me, the gods have spun out no such joy. For my father or myself, I must bear up, that's all. So this is, in literature, we call it a foil, right? Like the two fencing swords, like a foil. Orestes is acting as a kind of character foil by which Telemachus is able to sort of come into his own being. So Telemachus is more of a dynamic character, meaning that he changes over time. We see that he's been fluctuating back and forth with his lack of confidence and then growing confidence, his inability to contain his emotions, um, to times when somebody jeers at him, and he maintains a kind of calmness with the suitors as he left them. And now um, we get Nestor responding, and there's this moment of irony here, right? Because he says that none of the gods looked higher upon Odysseus, or with more esteem on Odysseus than Pallas. He says, I've never seen the immortals show so much affection as Pallas openly showed him. And so, if only she would favor you like your father. Now, we know as readers that she's already doing this. The Pallas Athena is right behind the scenes, occupying the space of mentor and urging Telemachus along. And so it's part of that recognition, which is kind of a hazy recognition that Nestor has throughout the beginning here. And we will see that confirmed by the end of book 3 here. Telemachus, though, then shows his lack of confidence for a minute, right? He says, never, your majesty. Telemachus countered gravely, that will come to pass now. Nestor has said, Athena, if only Athena was looking out for you like she looked out for your father. And Telemachus says, like, oh, that would never happen for me. And Athena breaks right in and yells at him, Telemachus, what's this nonsense slipping through your teeth? It's light work for a willing god to save a mortal even half the world away. Myself, I'd rather sail through the years of trouble and labor home and see that blessed day than hurry home to die at my own hearth like Agamemnon. So here Odysseus is being compared to Agamemnon, just as Orestes is being compared to Telemachus, right? So Mentor is saying, I would rather be away and not return quickly to my own death like Agamemnon. I'd rather be away and no one know where I am, like Odysseus. And then she says, but that great leveler death, not even the gods can defend a man, not even one they love, that day when fate takes a hold and lays him out at last. And Telemachus says, Mentor, distraught as we are for him, let's not speak of this anymore. So he's kind of coming to his senses. But then he turns and asks Nestor to tell the story of Agamemnon again. And so again, we just see this as how richly interwoven the story of Orestes is within these first books of the Odyssey. And he asks Nestor to tell the story. And Nestor goes ahead. He says, gladly, my boy, I'll tell you the story first to last. Right you are. You guessed that what would have happened if red-haired Menelaus, arriving back from Troy, had found Aegisthus alive in Agamemnon's palace. No barrow piled high enough on this earth for his dead body. No, the dogs and birds would have feasted on his corpse, sprawled on the plain outside the city gates, and no one, no woman in all Achaea would have wept a moment, such a monstrous crime the man had contrived. But there we were, camped out at Troy, battling out the long, hard campaign, while he, at his ease at home in the depths of Argos, stallion country, he lay siege to the wife of Agamemnon, luring, enticing with her talk. At first, true, he spurned the idea of such an outrage. Clytemnestra, the queen, her will was faithful still. And then there was a man, what's more, a bard close by, to whom Agamemnon, setting sail for Troy, gave strict commands to guard his wife. But then that day of doom the gods had bound her to surrender. Aegisthus shipped the bard away and then moved in on Clytemnestra. And so we get this detailed account. He says, now we, you see, were sailing home from Troy in the same squadron, Menelaus and I, comrades in arms from years of war. But as we rounded the holy Sunion, Athens headland, Lord Apollo attacked Atrides' helmsman. With his gentle shafts, he shot the man to death. And so they get delayed on their trip back, right? And so Menelaus doesn't come back to take the revenge over his dead brother. Instead, Menelaus, amassing a hoard of stores and gold, was off cruising his ships to foreign ports of call while Aegisthus hatched his vicious work at home. And so for 7 years, he says, Aegisthus and Clytemnestra lorded over Mycenae, rich in gold, once he'd killed Agamemnon. But in the 8th year, ushered in his ruin because Prince Orestes had home from Athens. Yes, he cut him down, that cunning murderous Aegisthus. Okay, so then we get a direct warning, or a direct advice, I guess, to Telemachus. So you, dear boy, take care, don't rove from the home too long, too far, leaving your own holdings unprotected. And so he says, hurry back. He urges Telemachus on to Lacedaemon to question Menelaus. He gives him gifts and ensures that they sleep in his hall. So at first, Telemachus is going to go down to the boat and sleep on the boat, and then go by sea around Greece. But Xenia, that law of hospitality, drives Nestor to say, no, 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 no. You need to come back and sleep in my palace and be my guest. And then, while this is all happening, Athena then takes flight. So Mentor says, yes, you go ahead, but I'm going to go to the ship. And Athena needs to be somewhere else anyway. And so we get, this is page 119, around 415, 416 in the lines. With that, the bright-eyed goddess winged away in an eagle's form and flight. And there's this kind of daze that the humans are in. Amazement fell on all of the Achaeans there. The old king, astonished by what he'd seen, grasped Telemachus's hand and cried out to the prince, dear boy, never fear. You'll be a coward or defenseless. Not if at your age the gods will guard you so. Of all who dwell on Olympus, this was none but she, Zeus's daughter. So he recognizes right away that this was Athena. And so we get the confirmation. So there was questioning earlier on, right? If only Athena were with you, Telemachus, like she was with your father. And then we get the overt confirmation of it. And Nestor, being the old and wise man that he is, immediately says, I am going to we're going to sacrifice a heifer, and we're going to give praise to Athena right away. And so then we get Telemachus stays the night, and then so we're getting a little bit more time coverage in this book. And just notice a couple of days go by. When young dawn rose, with her rose-red fingers shone once more, old Nestor, the noble chariot driver, climbed from bed, went out and took his seat on the polished stones. A bench glistening white, rubbed with glossy oil, placed the king before his looming doors. There Neleus' son, Neleus held his sessions years ago, a match for the gods in his council. And he, skipping down a little bit, he says, quickly, my children, carry out my wishes now, so I may please the gods. Athena first of all. She came to me at Poseidon's flowing feast. Athena and all her glory. Now someone go to the fields and fetch a heifer, lead her here at once, a herdsman drive her in. Someone hurry down to Prince Telemachus' black ship and bring up all the crewmen. Leave just 2 behind. And then we get this very detailed description of the heifer sacrifice down around lines 497. Now Nestor, the old charioteer, began the riot, pouring the lustral water, scattering barley meal. He lifted up his ardent prayers to Pallas Athena, launching the sacrifice, flinging onto the fire the first tufts of hair from the victim's head. And then we get his son, who strikes an axe through the neck's tendons, And the blow stunned the heifer's strength. The women cry, Nestor's daughters, sons, and wives, one loyal wife, Eurydice, Clemnus's eldest daughter. Then, hoisting up the victim's head from the trampled earth, they held fast as the captain of men, Pisistratus, slashed her throat. Dark blood gushed forth, life ebbed from her limbs. They quartered her quickly, cut the thigh bones out, and all according to custom wrapped them in round and fat, a double fold, sliced clean and topped with strips of flesh. And the old king burned these over dried split wood, and over the fire poured out glistening wine, while the young men at his side held five pronged forks. They burned the bones and tasted the organs. They sliced through the rest into pieces, spitted them on skewers, and raising points to the fire, broiled them all the meats. And while this is all happening, then one of Nestor's daughters, Polycaste, is washing Telemachus and anointing him with oil. And then they have this feast, and then they urge Telemachus on through with horses and chariots, and Nestor's son Pisistratus. Overland they go first to the land to Phera, which is Diocles' halls, and we don't get much information about them. So this is all happening in the last couple of stanzas here of book 3. And they stay there overnight, and then as we get the close here, when young dawn with her rose red fingers shone once more, they yoked the pair again, mounted the blazoned car, and out through the gates and echoing colonnade they whipped the team to a run, and on they flew, holding nothing back. And the prince reached the wheatlands, straining now for journey's end. So fast those purebred stallions raced them on, as the sun sank and the roads of the world grew dark. So we get an all-day journey into night to end book 3. So they're traveling in Sparta. They're traveling in these southern parts of Greece, right? They've traveled from Pylos, the port city, up to Lacedaemon, which is where in book 4 Telemachus will be speaking with Menelaus and Helen, the king and queen of Sparta. We will carry on with this and another contextualized reading. Thanks for your attention today. I hope you're reading along. Feel free to reach out with questions or comments. And if you have the urge, please support us on Patreon as we continue on with these contextualized readings. Thanks very much, and we'll catch up with you on the next video lecture.